Hello guys, it's Joanne here. Welcome again to my channel. If today is your first time here, thank you for stopping by, and for my returning subscribers, you're very welcome once again. Today I am going to be showing you how to sew this two-piece outfit. If you're interested in learning something like this, do well to stick around and watch this video to the very end. So guys, this is the two pieces which I've already cut out. If you've not seen the cutting tutorial, please do well to check in the description box down below. It is well detailed. Now let's get into the sewing of these two pieces. To begin, I'm going to start off with the dress. So this here is actually the back part. I cut this into two. There's going to be zipper at the back, and I also went ahead to cut out the facing, which I'm going to be using to turn the neckline. If you can, you can make use of a bias to turn your neckline. So I am going to be placing the facing like so, right side of the facing the right side of the fabric. I went ahead to secure with my pin. I'll be doing the same thing on this second piece. I'll now take this to the sewing machine and stitch the neckline. For the front piece, I am going to be doing the exact same thing, but I'm going to have to close the center front. I opened up the center front. You have to watch the cutting part so you understand what I am going to be doing here. After sewing the center front from the neckline all the way to the hemline, I am then going to open this up to the right side, and I am going to be placing the facing just the same way I did for the back. I'll place it on the neckline like this, right side of the facing the right side of the fabric, and I'm going to be stitching by 1/2 inch. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to notch and top stitch. So after stitching, this is exactly what I have. As you can see, I stitched the center front by 1/2 inch, and I went ahead to also sew the neckline, and I notch, top stitch, and iron that very well. As you've seen, it has laid properly. Now for the back, I did the same thing. I stitched the neckline, as you can see, and you've noticed that the zipper area is actually open, so you're going to leave it open like this. Then next thing I'm going to do is that I am going to have to secure the zipper line area with my pin. Now measure from the back neckline to where you want your zipper to end, and from that point you make a mark there. That's what I'm about doing. I had to measure from the neckline to where I want my zipper to end. I think I stopped around like 23 inches. So you're going to take the measurement of your zip so you know where to mark this particular point. And from there, I went ahead to use my pin to secure the zipper line area. Now from this point here, I am going to measure to where I actually want the split to start. Now from the hemline, you can measure however you want it. If you like, you can take that measurement on your body to determine where you want your split to start and end. I made a mark there, and from that point I am going to be sewing from here to this point I just marked, and then from that point to the hemline it's going to be open. That is why I am securing with my pin, just to leave it like so till I'm done with the making of this outfit. So I'll stitch from here to here and I'll get back to you guys. So I have gone ahead to close the zipper area and to stitch the parts which I marked earlier on, and this is what it looks like on the right side, and on the wrong side this is how it is. I actually opened up the allowance and I ironed that properly. Now guys, I am working with a chinos fabric and it is quite difficult to iron, so you will be seeing water splashes on this fabric, so please bear with me. Moving on, I place the front and the back together, right sides facing each other to stitch the shoulder area. Now to stitch your shoulder, you have to overlap the facing from the back to the front or from the front to the back, or you place it this way, making sure the seams around the neckline matches. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to stitch the shoulder by 1/2 inch, and after stitching the shoulder, go ahead to align the front and the back together and head on to stitching the sides together by either 1/2 inch or 1 inch or whatever allowance you left on your side line. After stitching, this is exactly what I have. So this is just very easy to make. It is not difficult at all. And now this is how this looks like from the upper part to the lower part. And guys, at this point I am going to have to overlock the armhole area first before I go ahead to use my hemming gum to hem it. That is because I don't want to use a bias to sew the armhole area. And then I'll do the same thing for this part, and of course I'm also going to also fix my zipper first before using the hemming gum to hem the facing around the neckline. And I will also hem the lower parts with my hemming gum. That's because I don't want to have stitches shown on the right side of this fabric. I want this to look like a ready-made. So guys, this is basically it for this. I'm going to fix the zipper off camera. And now next one, we are going to be moving on to the making of the shirt. Alright guys, please pay close attention to the making of this shirt. Although it is not difficult, but you will need to pay close attention to it. Alright guys, notice that I ironed out an interfacing on the extension of 2.5 inches I made for the bottom placket. This is because I am working with a very light fabric and I want that part to be quite stable. So you will need to iron out an interfacing if you're working with a light fabric as this one. Now I'm going to have to iron in 1/2 inch and fold in 1 inch and show you guys. That is, I'm going to be exhausting 1.5 inches and use the other 1 inch as an overlap for the button. I hope you understand what I am mean here. So I fold in 1/2 inch and I folded in 1 inch again. So I've exhausted the 2.5 inches. Now 1 inch left is going to be for the button overlap. I hope you understand. Now I did the same thing for the second part, and this is how I am going to overlap it. For the back parts, that part, the previous one I showed you is actually the front, and this is the back. If you've seen the cutting part, you definitely understand what I am doing here. All right, that is why it is very necessary for you to see the cutting part of this tutorial. And now notice the part in which I extended for the back by 2 inches. I am going to turn this to the right side and align it together, and then I'm going to be sewing a straight line from the top to the bottom on the 2 inches extension I made. Now back to the front, I have already run a straight stitch to secure the ones I folded in. All right, and I did this for both sides. Now I'm going to cut out the excess I have on the neckline. And then once you overlap it, this is how it's going to be. So for the back here, I've already run the stitch. As you can see here, a straight stitch, although I'm going to be losing this later, but I just want to, make this stitch so that it serves as a guide for me to place this properly very well. Make a notch on the center part of the extension on both the top part and the lower parts. And now after making that notch, you're going to make sure the part which you notch faces the middle part. Okay, it's actually on the midpoint of where you made the stitch. Do this for both the top and the lower part of this extension. And once you've done that, it is just going to align like so. I have ironed this up, and this is what it looks like. As you can see, it is well laid. You can even go ahead to just press it down if you want to. Moving on, I am going to start with the placement of the yoke to the back bodies. At this point, guys, you have to pay close attention to how I am going to be placing this yoke, as it is a bit tactical. So I'm taking off the pattern paper. Once I'm done with that, I am going to go ahead to notch the neckline, okay, the midpoint of the neckline of the yoke. Make sure you align the neckline properly, then go ahead to notch the midpoint. Do the same thing on the lower part of the yoke. Now place the back bodies wrong side facing you, and you're going to open up the yoke and place the right side of the yoke facing the wrong side of the main bodies. Please make sure that the part in which you notch align with the part in which you notch on the lower bodies of the back pattern. Once you stitch, you're going to have something like this: the right side of the yoke facing you and the wrong side of the back bodies facing you. All right, so it means you're going to be sewing, placing the wrong side of the main bodies to the right side of the yoke together like so, and you're going to secure with your pin, and then take to your sewing machine and stitch the chest line by 1/2 of an inch. Now I'm going to stitch this by just 1/2 of an inch, and when you open it, turn this to the right side of the main bodies. This is how you're going to have it. So after stitching, this is exactly what I have. I actually went ahead to iron the extra seam facing the yoke. Okay, I made sure that the extra seam faces the yoke part. And now on the facing of the yoke, I went ahead to iron in 1/2 of an inch, and I'm going to be using this to place exactly on the right side of the main fabric. Make sure the neckline aligns. Once it does, go ahead and use your pin to secure the neckline. At this point, you really have to be very careful and make sure that everything aligns properly and you're very sure of what you're doing before you proceed to sewing it. Now after aligning the neckline, you can as well proceed to secure the part in which you're going to stitch on the main fabric, like what I'm doing here. Secure it with your pin just to make sure everything sits properly. Please don't sew the neckline yet, rather sew this part by just a tiny stitch. You don't need to sew by 0.25. You're going to run a very tiny stitch, and you're going to have excess around this armhole. Leave it at that. After stitching, you're going to cut out the excess. For now, leave the excess like that. So guys, I went ahead to stitch this part, as you can see, and I did not sew the neckline. Let me show you guys. So just leave the neckline like this, because you're going to have to do something tactical around this part. So that is why you don't need to stitch the neckline to the yoke to the neckline yet. And now to join the front and the back, you're going to place the right side of the front facing you and the right side of the back facing you. Don't mind the yoke part. The yoke part is showing the wrong face. That is because it is actually we are going to be actually use this other yoke part to cover up the main yoke. Okay, so the right side of the main bodies is facing me and the right side of the front part is facing me. So you're going to like sew it like this. It means I am going to be sewing on the right face. I am joining the shoulder now, so I am sewing on the right face instead of sewing on the wrong face. I hope you understand. So the seam will be facing the right side of the fabric, while the wrong side of the fabric will be very neat. Do the same thing for this part. So let me go over this again. Now place the right side of the front part facing you and the right side of the back part facing you, and place the shoulder together and join. The extra seam is going to be facing the right side instead of facing the wrong side. So guys, I have stitched the shoulder area and now I have the seam facing the right side of the fabric. I went ahead to also give this a very good press, and now I allowed the seam to face the back facing. All right. So, and I also iron in 1/2 inch on the facing that I'm going to use to cover up the rough edges on the shoulder area. And when you're placing your facing, please ensure that you place it in such a way that your stitch should actually be exactly on the stitch you made earlier on when you stitch the shoulder together. I hope you understand what I mean here. Now at this point, you would definitely need to work with your pin because you don't want to rush at this point. You need to take your time and do it. So I went ahead to secure with my pin. I actually iron in 1/2 inch so that my work becomes, it makes my work a lot easier for me to achieve. Now I'm going to stitch here, make a tiny stitch on the shoulder area, and once I'm done with that, I am going to just sew in by the neckline by 0.25 just to hold the facing together. And guys, this is what I have here. As you've seen, the right face is looking neat and the wrong face is looking very neat as well. Now proceed to cut the extra fabric around the armhole area. Next, I'm going to go ahead to measure out the neckline to proceed to cutting the collar. Now, after measuring this neckline, I had about 17 inches. Please take your time and measure out the neckline. After measuring the neckline, I am going to put this away and cut out the collar. First, I'm going to draft it out on this pattern and use it to cut out on the fabric. Now I created a start point line on this pattern paper. From there I am going to take the neckline measurement. So the neckline I had was 17 inches. I divided 17 inches by 2 and I had 8.5 inches. I made a mark there. Don't add any extra allowance to it. Now I marked on different points of this pattern paper to enable me get a straight line. I'm going to now use my straight rule to connect each of those points together into a straight line. And then next I am going to go ahead to mark out the width of my collar. Now the width of your collar totally depends on what you want. For me, I think I did about 2.5 inches thereabouts. So I did 2.5 inches. I went ahead to mark 2.5 inches at different points from this part here to this other part, and I used my straight rule to connect these 2 points into a straight line. Now next I am going to come here on this line here and come in by 1 inch. And on this lower part here, I came up by 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to use my ruler to connect from that 1/2 inch slightly to the down part of this pattern, like so. As you've seen, that line is not straight. And from this part, I connected to the 1 inch in which I came in by. And now the collar is ready. This is actually the collar. Next I'm going to be cutting the collar stand. Okay, so I'm going to go up here and mark out some inches for the collar stand. For the collar stand, I marked out 1.5 inches and I connected these 2 points into a straight line. I initially wanted to just draft out the collar stand here on this second part in which I drew out, but I thought it would confuse you guys, so I proceeded to marking out the actual collar stand measurement from this other line I just drew here. So I'm marking out exactly 1.5 inches again on this line. So I'm connecting the 2 points into a straight line. So I now have this part as which I'm going to be using for the collar stand, and the initial point I marked, I just use my cancel that part. I'm not going to be making use of that space there. So the collar stand is actually this other one I just drew. I hope you get. So divide this line into two equal halves. Go ahead and make a point there. And now from this line here, go up by 0.25 and connect slightly to that point. And then from that point in which I came up by, I just canceled that part to show you guys that I am not going to be making use of that one anymore. Then from that point I came up by 0.25. Please go up by 0.25 or mark 1.5 inches from that point, or you can go up by 0.25 from the top line and just connect to the midpoint like so, just the same way you did for the first line. And once you've done this is it for this part. You've shaping up this part. So I'm going to just clean this up so I don't confuse you guys. And now for this part, I'm just going to give it a slight curve, a nice curve around this area. Just curve it all the way to this down part. And yes, it is this simple. Now label this as center back and center back here, and I'm going to just label this as the main collar, and this is the collar stand. Proceed to cut out your collar and your collar stand, and go ahead to use this to cut on your actual fabric. Now I'm going to use this to cut on the main fabric, and I'm going to be adding the necessary allowance, and you're going to be seeing what I am going to be doing next. So guys, I use the pattern to cut on the fabric. As you've seen, I actually at this point I was running short of fabric, to be very honest. So I added ½ inch on the upper part and the lower parts. If you notice, for the collars, for the main collar, I did not add any allowance on the top part, so I just had to like manage my fabric. At this point I was actually managing this fabric. So now let's proceed. So guys, I have the main collar sitting right here and the collar stand right here. You've seen the main collar, the shape, and you've seen the collar stand. This is how it's going to be once I stitch this. Now next we are going to have to start stitching each of these pieces together to form our collar. For the main collar, since I did not add any extra allowance to the top part, I had to just open this up. Actually, it's not meant to be closed, so I opened this up, and I'm going to take this right side facing each other, and I'm going to be sewing from this side here to the lower part here and to the top part, and I'm going to notch and iron, which I already did off camera, as you can see, and I have it looking like this. Note that I did not stitch the top part, okay? And fold it together like this and make a notch on the middle point. Fold your collar stand together like so, and also make a notch on the top part and on the lower part. And now go ahead to open up your collar stand like so. Right side should face you, and now place this part that is open to the top part of this collar stand, as you can see, and now use this one to close it. You're now going to sew the collar stand to the main collar. All right, I hope you understand what I am doing here. Sew the collar stand to the main collar, and you're going to be running a stitch by either half of an inch or 0.25 depending on the allowance which you kept. When you're sewing, please don't sew the lower parts. Leave about half inch from the lower part and just stitch. Okay, and leave about half inch from the lower part and stitch by half inch all the way to the other part. After stitching, I have something like this. Going ahead to just make a notch and trim out any part that is a bit excess, so that once I open this up, it doesn't appear too bulky. Take this to your ironing board and give it a very nice press. And once you've ironed this properly, it is just going to align. And then I am going to proceed to sewing the collar to the main outfit. So I have ironed this, and I actually ironed in half of an inch inside. That is so that my work can be very easy. I don't like it when I'm working with such fabric and I'm being stressed out. So yeah, that is just it. And now for the main fabric, go ahead to notch the center back as you've seen. Before you notch, please align the neckline. Make sure everything is well aligned, and then place the collar to the neckline. Okay, start from the part in which you notch and secure with your pin. Now secure every other part with your pin as well. And once you've done that, take this to your machine and sew by half of an inch. And after sewing by half of an inch, you're going to use this part in which you ironed half inch in and just cover up the rough seam. Now guys, I have stitched the collar to the neckline, and this is what this looks like. At this point, I was so pleased with the outcome, and this is looking very beautiful, guys. So yeah, next off, I am going to be, opening this up. You can leave yours this way, you can open this up. It depends on what you actually want. If you remember the extension we made on the back part, this is what I am, that's where I am actually, opening up. To some people, they like to leave it this way. To some, they like to just, you know leave it free like so. And now onto the armhole, I am going to stitch the sleeve around the armhole. I have a detailed tutorial on the cutting and the sewing of a shirt sleeve. If you've not seen it, I'm going to be dropping it in the description box below. You can check that out. It is well detailed. I'm going to stitch this sleeve off camera and I'm going to get back to you. Now I've stitched the sleeve, and this is what this looks like. It is very easy to achieve that. That is why you should see that tutorial. It is well detailed so that you would know how to make your shirt sleeve. It is very detailed. Now I am going to stitch from the sleeve area all the way to the side line, closing that up by either half of an inch or whatever allowance you kept. That is what you're going to be using to close that. For me, I did just half of an inch. I'm going to just use the half inch and stitch all the way from the sleeve all the way to the hemline. I'll repeat the same thing on this other part as well. Now after stitching the sleeve, the side line, this is exactly what I have. Actually left some part around the armhole. So after overlocking that part, I'm going to go ahead to close it back. As you can see, this is looking very beautiful and very neat. I am going to head on to now overlock the rough edges and go ahead to iron this properly, making sure that everything is neat and clean. So yeah, for the button, you're going to place it like this, front side facing you, and from the top of the shoulder you're going to measure out your bust point line. For me, my bust point is 10.5 inches. From there, I'll just make a mark and start marking down 3 inches apart to wherever you want your button to stop. And from the bust point line, go up by 3 inches and keep on going up by 3 inches till you get to your neckline. Okay, that is for your buttonhole and your button placement. And now for this back, I am going to just iron it out. I don't want to have any line shown on the back part. Yep. Now for this part, just going to open up a button like two, and then that's just basically it. In the hemline, I'm going to be hemming half inch in or half inch out, or you're going to hem like 0.25 in and 0.25 out. Depends on what you actually want. So yeah, that is just basically it for the making of the shirt. And guys, if you're still here at this moment, it means you find this video very helpful. Please do well to share this video, also give it a thumbs up and drop a comment to serve as an encouragement for me to keep on posting content like this for you guys. And guys, we have come to the end of this tutorial. I honestly hope you find this video helpful. Please, thank you so much for always coming back here, and see you in my next one.